Everyone's afraid of something. The dentist, taxes, the dark, even broccoli. Yuck. We all have something that keeps us up at night. And honestly, some things are scary. The good news is that with God, we don't have to be as afraid. With God on our side, we can fear less.
Today we are continuing a worship series that is exploring how we can better handle the fears and anxieties we sometimes face in life. Last week, we talked about the fact that everyone has fears. Some of our fears are rational, some are not. Some of us experience more fears, some less. But all of us, no matter how deep our faith may be, will experience some level of fear and anxiety. There is no escaping that reality. The goal of this series is not to tell you how to get rid of those things entirely. This isn't about being fearless. It is about being able to fear less. It's about turning down our fears and anxieties so that we can keep them from overwhelming us or preventing us from experiencing the fullness of life. For the next few weeks, we are going to talk about some of the more prevalent fears people face and how we can approach them in ways that will help us minimize the negative effect they can have on our lives. Today, we are going to talk about the fears of failure and letting other people down. Whether it is about applying for a job or taking a new job, playing sports, performing in the arts, entering a relationship, becoming a parent, starting college or a vocational training program, taking a test, speaking in public, or a host of other things, the fear of failure is one of the most common experiences of being human. After all, we all fail, and few, if any of us, enjoy that experience. Failure can result in feelings of embarrassment or even shame. It can eat away at our confidence. It can cause us to feel like we've let people down or disappointed them. It can make us feel like we've let ourselves down. Even if the failure is relatively small, it can have a significant impact. The negative feelings associated with that failure can create a hesitancy in us to take risks in the future. While understandable, that hesitancy can create a cycle where we get kind of stuck, afraid to take any risks out of fear of failure. That is a really hard place to be. And if we want to experience the fullness of life, we've got to find a way to move beyond our fear of failure. A good place to start when it comes to that, to get to that place where we fear less, is to remember that the goal is not to live a life free of failure, but to figure out how to respond to failure in a way that allows us to move forward without getting locked up by the fear of what may happen if and when we fail again. A key step in that process for me is to remember that failure isn't always a bad thing. If we are willing to learn from it and, if necessary, make amends for any harm that resulted, failure can teach us a lot of things. It can help us become better at our professions, better at our relationships, and better at the activities or hobbies in which we engage. This is one of the reasons I think it is so important for young people to be engaged in some kind of extracurricular activity. Things like sports, music, drama, art, student government, and other activities help them to learn how to handle failure. Because if they participate in those things, they will have moments of success, which is great. But they will also have moments of failure. They're going to strike out, miss that note, forget that line, or lose that student council election. As parents or caregivers, it can be hard to watch the young people we love experience those things. But it is so important. Equally important is the fact that when they make a mistake, young people are watching to see how we respond. And if we are not careful, our actions can become part of the reason they develop a fear of failure. As a baseball coach, I watched parents treat Little League games like they were the World Series. And as much as I enjoyed coaching travel ball, it could be even worse. The responses some people have when their children fail or when their children's teammates fail are not helpful. And they are not healthy. Parents and caregivers, let the children you love fail. Teach them it is a normal part of the learning process, and with practice and effort, they can get better. And if not, they might recognize their strengths lie elsewhere, leading them to try something new, something that may bring them a lot of happiness. This kind of approach will help them be gentler with themselves and with others when failures inevitably happen. It will teach them that it is okay to fail, which is something that will serve them well throughout their lives. I have failed more times than I care to count. I never like it, but I have had some incredible coaches and mentors along the way who helped me understand how to make the most of my failures by learning from them, owning my role in them, making amends when needed, and moving beyond them. That said, getting past the hard parts of failure and moving toward the value in them is not always easy. And sometimes our failures do create situations of hardship, even causing some harm to us or others. Because of that, when we are put in a situation where failure is a possibility, we are naturally disposed to be afraid. As we talked about last week, our brains are wired to avoid risk. So if we are about to try something that could cause some harm if we fail, our brains might hit the brakes. When that happens, we have a choice to make. Do we press through and attempt whatever opportunity is before us, or do we choose another path? Now, sometimes the best thing we can do is choose another path because the risks are too high. There are times we have to count the costs before taking the risk. But sometimes overcoming our fears and pressing on is the right thing. So how do we know which choice to make? A good first step in that process is identifying what our fears about the potential failure really are. What are they about? Where are they coming from? For example, for the most part, I am not afraid of failure in and of itself. In fact, I'm more afraid of not trying at all than trying and failing. I'm willing to try a lot of things, even if doing so means that I will inevitably fail. Where I struggle is the fear of disappointing or letting other people down. If a failure of mine could lead to those two things, I will get locked up pretty fast. I hate the thought of disappointing people or letting them down. That kind of thing keeps me up at night. I don't want to fail my family. I don't want to fail my friends. I don't want to fail you, the church I love and serve. I don't want to fail God. If I think that has happened, I can be pretty hard on myself. Now, some of you may be in a similar place, but for some of you, the fear of failure may be about something else. Some people are afraid of failure because they don't want to look bad in front of others. For them, failure can feel embarrassing or shameful. Some people are afraid of failure because they feel that anything short of winning is a complete loss. You're either first or you're last. Some of us fear failure because we don't want to be judged or rejected by others. The fear of rejection is a big one for a lot of people, especially those of us who are people pleasers. We just want to be liked. All these fears around failure are understandable. But if we aren't careful, they can get the best of us, keeping us from taking any risks at all. Naming them is a big step in making sure that doesn't happen. Once we've identified some of the underlying reasons we fear failure, there are some things we can do to help us turn those fears down. First, it can help to identify if the fear we are experiencing is rational. Sometimes the cost of failure is too high to take the risk, and we may need to rethink things. But sometimes our fears are not so rational. Sometimes we let our imaginations get the best of us, and we create all kinds of negative scenarios that might play out, no matter how unlikely they might be. To help sort it all out, another helpful tool is to reach out and talk to someone you trust. Get their insights and ask for their support and encouragement. Finally, allow yourself some grace. It is okay to fail. It is okay to make mistakes. If those mistakes lead to a negative impact on someone else, seek their forgiveness and ask how you can make it right. And when you see someone fail or someone fails you, try and remember to treat them the way you want to be treated when you fall short. A little bit of grace and kindness can go a long way. I want to close by turning to an incredible story of failure that is found in the New Testament. It's a story about a disciple named Simon, who Jesus gives the name Peter. And it begins when, after Jesus asked who people thought he was, Peter said, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Upon that confession, Jesus said to him, "You are blessed. I tell you, you will be the rock upon which I will build my church, and I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven." It is an incredible moment and speaks so highly of Peter's faith and of Jesus' trust in him. But then, on the night Jesus was betrayed, he told the disciples that all of them would desert him. Peter replied by telling Jesus there was no way he would deny him, to which Jesus said, "By the time the sun rises, you will deny me 3 times. Again, Peter pressed back. "Even though I die with you, I will never deny you." I believe Peter meant those words. I think he believed to the core of his being that there was no way he would deny Jesus. There was no way he would fail him in such a terrible way. And yet, just as Jesus said, before the sun rose the next morning, Peter had denied Jesus 3 times. Now just think about this. Peter had declared Jesus to be the Messiah. Because of Peter's faith, Jesus said the church would be built upon him, that Peter would have the keys to the kingdom of heaven. And then, when the first test of faith, the first hint of threat came his way, Peter bailed. He turned away in fear, saying he never knew Jesus. Talk about a failure. Peter let Jesus down when Jesus needed him the most. He let the disciples down by not demonstrating a deeper faith. He let himself down. And he let God down. I can't imagine what that must have been like for him. But this was not the end of his story. According to the Gospel of John, after Jesus was raised from the dead, he appeared to the disciples. And as he did so, he turned to Peter and asked, "Do you love me?" Peter responded that of course he loved Jesus. But then Jesus asked him the same question 2 more times. And each time, Peter gave the same response. This pattern was not accidental. Peter had denied Jesus 3 times. But instead of calling Peter out, instead of shaming him, instead of revoking the claim that Peter would build the church and hold the keys to the kingdom of heaven, Jesus was kind. His response to Peter's failure was kindness. It was grace. It was loving. And it was redemptive. When it comes to our failures and the failures of others, I wonder what might happen if we tried to be a little bit more like Jesus. Maybe we could be a little kinder to ourselves, a little more grace-filled toward others. Maybe we can remember that our failures don't define us. What defines us is the way we respond to them. What defines us is that even when we fail, we are still children of God. Remembering that will help us all to fear less and live more. Amen.